and a profound responsibility to stand before you today to present a vision that reaches beyond geography, beyond time, and even beyond conventional historical interpretation. We gather here not merely to examine two nations, Egypt and the United States, but we present one of the most dynamic and forward-looking expressions of modern civilization, characterized by institutional innovation, cultural diversity, and an ongoing pursuit of progress. At first glance, these two civilizations appear distant, separated by millennia. Profound proposition that Egypt is not confined to the past and not confined to geography. Egypt lives in symbols, in institutions, in architecture, and in museums, and in the intellectual frameworks that continue to shape our modern world. And nowhere active engagement through the initiative Explore Egypt in the USA. We transform this dialogue into a living experience, one that connects cities, museums, and universities into a unified civilizational journey that is not simply about history, it is about identity, it is about knowledge, it is about the future, because ultimately the question before us is not what did civilizations achieve, but rather what can civilizations achieve together. Let's begin. So this opening slide establishing the intellectual frameworks of our journey. The phrase civilization dialogue is central. It implies interaction, not dominance, not imitation, but mutual engagement across time. We are not comparing Egypt and America. We are uncovering their connections. Now, these works represent the scholarly foundation of this project. They demonstrate that Egyptian civilization is not limited to its geographical borders. Rather, it exists globally through collections, scholarships, and intercultural influence. Egypt become a global civilizational presence. So this reflects critical idea that scholarship must not remain confined to academia. It must be transferred into accessible lived experience. Now, it reflects a critical idea that scholarship must not remain confined, and these figures of George Washington are not only historical actors. They embody values that resonate within ancient concepts of governance, duty, and legacy. This slide also expands the narrative beyond Egypt and America. It reminds us that civilizations are interconnected. The African-American heritage, Egyptian foundations, and American development form of continuum. Now, this introduced a critical initiative, Explore Egypt, in Washington, D.C., that it transforms the city into a living classroom where monuments, symbols, and institutions become tools of interpretations. Now, the pyramid is the most enduring symbol in human history. Its presence in American national imagery reflects not imitation, but recognition of universal principle, stability, order, and aspiration. So from the stones to symbols, the pyramid as a universal language of power. So this slide here invites us to reflect on one of the most powerful and enduring symbols in human history, the pyramid. On the right, we see the Great Pyramid of Giza, constructed over 4,500 years ago during Egypt's Old Kingdom. This monument was not merely a tomb, it was a statement of cosmic order, engineering, mastery, and the eternal aspiration of civilization. On the left, here we observe the pyramid as it appears on the Great Seal of the United States, printed on the $1 bill. While separated by millennia, this symbol reflects similar philosophical ideas, preeminence and strength and structural progress. The pyramid wide base represents a strong foundation, whether this foundation is a people, a constitution, or a system of values. As the structure rises, it narrows, symbolizing refinement, directions, and ultimately purpose. In ancient Egypt, this pointed axis aligned symbolically with the heavens. In the American context, it represents a nation striving toward higher ideals. It is important to emphasize that this is not a claim of direct transmission of imitation, but rather a reflection of shared human tendencies to express stability and aspiration through geometry. The pyramids, in its simplicity and strength, become a universal language spoken across civilization. In this way, we move from stone to symbols, from physical monuments to philosophical ideas. So now, the divine protection to national vision. The symbol of the eye reflects a timeless human pursuit of wisdom, protection, and higher awareness. Vision, awareness, and guidance. The second symbol we examine is the eye, a motif that appears across culture and civilizations as a representation of awareness, protection, and insight. So on the right, we see the eyes of Horus, one of the most recognizable symbols in ancient Egyptian civilization. It represented protection, healings, and completeness. It was believed to guard against harm and restore balance, deeply connected to both spiritual belief and royal authority. On the left, we observe the all-seeing eye, also known as the eye of providence, positioned above the pyramid on the Great Seal of the United States. This symbol reflects divine guidance, moral oversight, and the idea that a nation operates under a higher ethical vision. What is remarkable is not similarity in form alone, but similarity in meaning. Both symbols extend beyond the physical sight. They represent insight, wisdom, and responsibility. This suggests that leadership, whether ancient or modern, must be guided not only by power but awareness. So the eye, therefore, becomes not just a symbol, but a principle. The principle that vision must guide power. So, ladies and gentlemen, What you see before you on this slide are two powerful symbols, separated by thousands of years, yet deeply connected in meanings, purpose, and civilizational expression. So on the left, we have the Great Seal of the United States. Centered around the American bald eagle, on the right, we see a falcon of Horus from ancient Egypt, one of the most enduring and sacred symbols in human history. At first glance, they may appear to belong to entirely different worlds, one modern and one ancient, one republican and one divine. But when we look deeper, we begin to discover something extraordinary, a shared human language of power, protection, and higher vision. So let's begin with the American eagle. Adopted in 1782, the Great Seal of the United States presents the eagle as a symbol of strength, freedom, and sovereignty. In its right tongue, it holds an olive branch representing peace. In its left, it holds arrows symbolizing readiness for war. This duality reflects a fundamental principle of governance, the balance between peace and strength. Above the eagle head, we see for 13 stars representing the original 13 states, unified under one nation, and the phrase under it, out of many one, captured the essence of the American experiment, unity emerging from diversity. But beyond these political meanings, the eagle itself carries a deeper symbolism. It is a bird that flies higher above the earth. Seeing vast distance with clarity, it represents vision, oversight, and authority from above. It is not just a national emblem, it is a statement about how a nation sees itself, elevated, watchful, and guided by principles rather than the individuals. Now let's turn to the ancient Egypt. The falcon you see on the right represents Horus, the sky got one of the central figure in ancient Egyptian cosmology. He was the embodiment of a kingship itself. Every pharaoh was considered the living Horus on earth. The falcon, like the eagle, soars high above the land. From that height, it sees everything. In ancient Egyptian thought, this was not just a physical vision, it was a divine awareness. The ruler, as a Horus, was expected to govern with this higher vision, maintaining balance, justice, and cosmic order. What the Egyptian called ma'at, which is justice. Notice the outstretched wings of the falcon. This is a powerful visual message, protection. The wings extend over the land, over the people, symbolizing ruler who shelters and safeguards the nation under divine authority. So now we ask ourselves, what connects these two symbols? Why does a modern republic and an ancient divine kingdom both choose a bird of the sky, an eagle and a falcon, to represent authority? The answer lies in something universal. Across civilizations, humanity has always looked to the sky as a source of meaning, power, and transcendence. Birds that fly at a great heights naturally become symbols of elevation, of rising above the ordinary, of seeing what others cannot see, of connecting earth to heaven. In ancient Egypt, this connection was explicit. Authority descended from the divine, The falcon of Horus represents the ruler chosen and guided. In the United States, the framework is different. Authority comes from the people, from a constitutional system, and yet the symbolism remains striking similar. The eagle still represents higher vision, moral authority, and guardianship over nation. So while the source of power has changed from divine kinship to democratic governance, the visual language has endured. This is the essence of civilization continuity. It reminds us that symbols are not random. They are chosen carefully, often drawing from a deep reservoir of human experience and historical memory. Whether consciously or unconsciously, later civilizations inherit and interpret the symbols of earlier ones. And this is precisely the message of this presentation. So now, to come to the Potomac River. The Potomac River and the Nile, that's where the capital. In Egypt, they have most of the Egyptian capital throughout the history, starting from Thebes and Amarna and Memphis, was around the Potomac River. And Washington, D.C. also around the Potomac River, chosen carefully. So this is something that in many of the ancient capitals around the rivers, because the river is the source of activities. Rivers are the foundation of civilization. They shape economics, define boundaries, and influence political organizations. The Nile and the Potomac reflect parallel roles in shaping their perspective in society. So this pattern of development, also centralization and the movement to organization. Now, the Smithsonian Museums, the institution which was the castle, the original Smithsonian. The original Smithsonian, it's originally established as a source of knowledge. When James Smithson, the British scientist, donated $500,000 for diffusion of knowledge in the States, never been alive here, but eventually they chose it as an institution for knowledge. And since then it's growing. More than 20 museums now belongs to the Smithsonian. So so the knowledge within the Smithsonian is similar to the knowledge within the temples in Egypt, in ancient Egypt. The temples were the learning process, the learning progress from the beginning, before they start to be ascribed to any other positions would be taken after the being in the temple and learning how to the government works. So then moving now to the National Mall. The National Mall function as a symbolic and ceremonial access, mirroring ancient procession pathways. To the left, the National Mall in Washington, D.C., and to the right, that's the Valley of Sphinx, connecting Luxor to Karnak temples. It's a very similar idea. Now we're moving to the obelisk. Washington Monument is a direct continuum of Egyptian architectural symbolism. Ladies and gentlemen, at first glance, what you see on this slide may appear to be simple architectural comparison. Two tall, slender stone structures reaching toward the sky. On the left stand the Washington Monument, one of the most iconic landmarks of the United States. On the right, that we see an ancient Egyptian obelisk, like those found at temples such as Karnak Temple. But this is not merely a visual similarity. This is a story of inheritance, transformations, and civilization continuity. Let us begin with the ancient Egypt. The obelisk was one of the most sacred architectural forms in the ancient Egyptian civilization, carved from just a single piece of stone, often granite. It was placed at the entrance of temples. It shapes the deeply symbolic, rising from square base and tapering to the point. The obelisk represents a ray of the sun. Solidified in stone, it is a connection between earth and sky, between the human world and the divine realm. The very top, known as a pyramidion, was often covered in gold or electrum so that it would catch the sunlight and shine brilliantly, transforming the monument into a beacon of divine presence. These obelisks were not just decorative, they were inscribed with hieroglyphics, recording the achievement of pharaohs. They stood as eternal declaration of power, faith, and cosmic order. Now let's turn to Washington, D.C. The Washington Monument, completed in the 19th century, was built to honor George Washington, the founding father and the first president of the United States. At over 555 feet high, it is the tallest stone structure of its kind in the world. But what is most fascinating is not its size, it is its form. Because the Washington Monument is in essence a modern obelisk. No hieroglyphics, no gilded pyramidion, but the same upward movement, the same simplicity, the same symbolic gestures rising toward the heavens. So we must ask ourselves, why did the designers of the American Capitol choose this form? Why echo a structure that originated over 3,000 years earlier along the Nile? The answer lies in what the obelisk represents. In ancient Egypt, the obelisk symbolized eternity, divine connection, and the enduring legacy of leadership. And in Washington, D.C., the monument serves a remarkably similar purpose. It honors not just a man, but an idea, the founding of a nation, the birth of a political vision, and the aspiration toward unity and preeminence. The form itself carries meanings. It says, this legacy rises, it endures, it connects earth to something higher. There is also a deeper philosophical connection. Ancient Egyptian civilization was built on the concept of might. Might means truth and justice, balance and cosmic order. The pharaoh's rule was to uphold this order, ensuring harmony between the divine and the human worlds. In a different ways, the American Republic was also founded on a principle of order, constitutional law, justice, and balance of power. Different systems, different beliefs, but shared pursuit of stability, continuity, and a higher purpose. And once again, architecture becomes the language through which these ideas are expressed. It is also important to recognize that this was not an isolated choice. During the 18th century and the 19th centuries, there was a global fascination with ancient Egypt, especially after Napoleon's expedition and the disappearing of the hieroglyphics. Egypt came to represent antiquity, wisdom, and timeless civilization. By adopting the obelisk form, America was, in a sense, aligning itself with that legacy, placing its own national story within the broader continuum of human history. So, when we look at these two images side by side, we are not just seeing two monuments. We are witnessing a dialogue across millennia, a dialogue between ancient Egypt and modern and civic space. And yet, both speaks the same architectural language, a vertical line, a movement upward, a declaration that what is built here is meant to last. So the obelisk began as a symbol of the sun in ancient Egypt. And today in Washington, D.C., it stands as a symbol of a nation, different meanings, but the same message, a legacy that rises and endures. It represents the human desire to connect the earthly with the eternal. Now, we move into the water symbolism here. The one to the right, which is the sacred lake in front of Karnak temple, that was a tradition. And there's a lot of sayings about this water stay always fresh, although it is not connected into the river Nile or anything. To the left, but this is a tradition from 4,500 years ago. Here in Washington, D.C., you could find this reflecting pool in front of the U.S. Capitol or between Lincoln Memorial and World War II Memorial. So we'll move on to the libraries. Library of Congress and the Library of Old Alexandria in Egypt. And you can see the Library of Old Alexandria in Egypt was destroyed by fire. You could imagine what kind of knowledge was there before the fire burned all this knowledge. That we will now we're trying to imagine, we're trying to find out what's the reality about ancient Egypt. And this Library of Old Alexandria has this, and what we got out of that is philosophers and people that came from Greek and Roman, and they copied some of the knowledge from Old Library of Alexandria before burning. And you can see in the Library of Congress here, if you look at the figures showing that civilization starts from ancient Egypt. The figures was fair here, and ending in the United States of America. That's a symbol of beginning of civilization, and the civilization went around and landed here in the United States. Now, when we're moving now to George Washington Masonic National Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. This monument, which is to the left here in the picture, this monumental structure in Alexandria, Virginia, is not just a building. It is a symbolic tribute to leadership, enlightenment, and national identity. Built between 1922 and 1932, it honors George Washington, who was both the first President of the United States and a prominent Freemason. It designed deliberately toward the sky, symbolizing ascension, knowledge, and illumination. Positioned on the hill, it dominates the landscape much like ancient sacred or guiding structure. Inside, it's a function as a museum, a memorial, and ceremonial space, preserving Washington's legacy and Masonic ideas. The structure represents the idea that great leaders guide nations just as light houses guides travelers. A powerful philosophical concept rooted in ancient traditions, near 100 to 130 meters, making it one of the tallest man-made structure of the ancient world. It was used to fire and reflection mirror to guide ships safety to the harbor. It stood for over a millennium before being destroyed by earthquakes. It was more than a navigation tool. It was a beacon of civilization, representing Alexandria as a center of knowledge, trade, and cultural exchange. So the connection between ancient Egypt and modern America here, both structures are towers of guidance. Both stands as a symbol of enlightenment and leadership. Both are placed strategically to overlook and guide their surroundings. Both reflect ideas that civilization progress through knowledge, vision, and directions. The Masonic temple can be seen as a modern interpretation of ancient lighthouse concept. The lighthouse guided ships through physical darkness, and the Masonic memorial symbolized guiding society through intellectual and moral light. Here we see a powerful dialogue across more than 2,000 years of history. On the right, the lighthouse of Alexandria, Egypt, on the one of the greatest achievements of ancient Egyptian and Hellenistic engineering, stood as a beacon of light, guiding ships safely into the of the most important cities of the ancient world. On the left, we have the George Washington Masonic National Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. At first glance, it may be purely American, but look closely at its structure. It rises in tiled and in ancient towers. It dominates the skyline. Stands not just as a structure, but as a symbol. This is not a coincidence. The architectural and the thinker behind these buildings were deeply influenced by classical civilizations, including Egypt. The idea of the towering structure that guides, that illuminates, that represents knowledge and leadership. This concept that traces back to ancient Egypt. Now, we're moving on now. The museums that we're going to start seeing some of the artifacts, and also after in the 18th century, 19th century, many wealthy people, they built their tombs in the shape of ancient Egyptians, pyramids or structures guided by sphinx. So now we move into the museums. The museums, in New York Metropolitan Museum is one of these most museums that has memorials, actually artifacts from Egypt, from the very ancient, from the beginning of pre-Hellenistic until the end of ancient Egyptian civilizations. And also what you see in front of you here is a temple called Dandur Temple. Dandur Temple was a gift from Egypt to the United States, since the United States participated in rescuing some of the Egyptian monuments that was going to be submerged underwater after building the high dam. So UNESCO, the whole world participated, and as a recognition from Egypt to United States rule, that United States got that temple, which is now even the created environment in the museum that the country that sent the expedition, they can take some of the monument if it has more than similar ones. But if it is unique, it's supposed to stay in Egypt, except some exception, of course. For instance, the bust of Nefertiti, when it's unique, but how it went out to Berlin, Germany, the archaeologist who did discovery, he messed the shape of that bust. Did not show that it's unique. And when it went there, now they're trying to bring it back to Egypt, but it's not easy task. So Berlin or Germany will never let this go, of course. Now, as you can see, this monument, but even though these monuments, wherever they are Egyptians. So it's like, as I mentioned, ambassadors of Egypt, wherever they are. People talk about it, this is an Egyptian monument to Egyptian artifacts. Like everywhere you go in the world, you find it there. So, and see how careful they move it, and even sometimes, for instance, for the King Tut collection, they spend even thousands and even millions of dollars just to protect the movement of these artifacts. So this is something that's throughout the museums, here even in Washington, D.C., the Natural History Museum. They have collections there, mummies and other activities in the Smithsonian Museum that related to the life of ancient Egypt that displayed in the second floor in the Natural History Museum. And an institution like universities, they have departments of Egyptologists. So with the Egyptology background, we talk about that the Egyptology science in the United States here has a great role, and even discovering has every season, like in the summertime, they send expedition to explore the monuments underground. You could imagine that the Egyptian civilization has monuments underground that's not discovered yet. And that's because of the financial need, but universities from around the world, they send expedition for that purpose. So now if we go back to something very important here, which is connection in the United States called sister cities between Egypt and United States. So the city of Alexandria, Egypt, also it connected to the Baltimore, Maryland, sister cities. And also from in Aswan in Egypt to Sonoma, California. And also the other cities around here, like for instance Luxor also and Baltimore. So now we'll go move into the students and family exchange programs. These exchange programs here that has the knowledge connected, that people can stay together and they learn from each other, and they learn about each other. And this is something very important I'm going to talk about now, especially in the Constitution, in a governmental reason that the Thutmose III started, was a pioneer in establishing this exchange programs. Actually, when the policy of cultural and educational exchange is not a modern invention. During the reign of Thutmose III, Egypt implemented a sophisticated system of imperial that would have people from different places to come and learn about the Egyptian backgrounds. And when they go back to rule their countries, they are ready to explore the relationship and to continue the relationship with Egypt as they learned it when they were there. So now we explore Egypt in USA. It is this is something we cannot cover everything, but we will come now to an end where we can say we are concluding this journey, and we are left not only with one that reflects the evolutions of human civilization itself. Egypt offers depth, connection to region, to meanings, to continuity. United States offers dynamism, a vision of innovation, progress, and future possibilities. When these two dimensions meet, they do not compete. They complement, they enrich, they elevate one another. This is the essence of civilization dialogue. It is not about preserving the past as something distant and static. It is about achieving the past, bringing it into the present, and allowing it to shape the future. Through the initiative Explore Egypt in the USA, we take a decisive step in the direction. We transform abstract connection into lived experiences. We create pathways for understanding, for engaging, for discovery, but beyond programs, beyond institution, beyond preservation, there is a deeper message. In a world increasingly defined by division, misunderstanding, and uncertainty, civilization have a choice. They can divide themselves in opposition in one another, or they can discover themselves in relation to one another. Egypt and the United States offer a powerful model, a model of dialogue, a model of continuity, a model of shared human purpose. And perhaps the most important realization is this: the future of human will not be shaped by civilizations that stand apart, but by civilization that chose to walk together, together in knowledge, together in respect, together in a shared commitment to a better world. This is not only a vision, it is an invitation to continue the dialogue, to deepen understanding, and to build a future worthy of a shared human heritage. Thank you very much. And if anybody has any questions, we'll be glad to discuss that. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Sure. Any questions?
Is the statue of Nefertiti still in Berlin?
Yes, still there. Germany will never let it go. Because actually they have the whole room only that was of Nefertiti. No other memorial, no other artifact there. It's a queen in its place, and people come from, and when Hitler saw that, he said that will never leave Germany. You make sure that this is, because actually they're making lots of money out of that post there in that Berlin museum. Okay, well, thank you very much. And you have a good, enjoy the rest of your stay here in the Egyptian embassy. Thank you.
Very interesting.
Alhamdulillah.